Alright, today we're going to be talking about a category of chrome shadows that has been highly requested, and that is pink chromes. I often do feel like pink shadows are a little bit out of my comfort zone, but in my opinion, I have some great options here and at a wide price point range. You've probably heard me talk about a lot of these different shades before. The majority of them are not brand new, which is kind of fun because I love revisiting some of these older shades. I've got everything from mainstream to indie brands, and I'm going to do some detailed hand swatches and eye swatches, so let's go ahead and get into it. There are several brands that I have discount affiliate codes with, so I'm going to go ahead and pop those up on the screen now. In addition, everything will be in the description box. Alright, starting off with one of my very favorite drugstore releases from 2026, that is from Wet n Wild. We have one of the Chameleon Chrome Pressed Shadows. This is the shade Starlight Fever. I absolutely love that they did these shades in a couple of iridescents as well. Starlight Fever is a gorgeous pink iridescent, and it has an orange, yellow, and green shift. These shades are basically full pigmentation on the first swipe, and I think these shades are really fun to use as highlighting shades as well, even on the cheeks if you like an intense cheek highlight. I'm curious, let me know in the comments if you ended up giving this formula a try. I've had so many people tell me how much they enjoy these shades. The next shade we have from Wet n Wild is Nebula Rush, part of the same launch, but it is a jewel toned kind of magenta pink. And like you tend to see with a lot of the jewel toned chromes, you have a very impressive shift. This one shifts green, yellow, orange, and red. At this point, I would say this is not a super unique kind of shade. This is the type of jeweled chrome that we saw from Clionadh even 6 years ago. But the fact that you can get affordable multi-chromes and multi-chromes at the drugstore, I think is super fun. Alright, the next shade we have is from Beaute Creations, and this is one of their Writing Solo Single Shadows. This is another formula that I have talked about many times on my channel before. In general, I have to say I have been blown away by the quality of quite a few Beaute Creations products for the price point. I feel like you not only get a nice formula, but a beautiful packaging, and the shade Supernova is amongst one of my favorites. The shade is what I would describe as a pale pink that has a green, blue, and pale golden shift. Alright, and the next shade we have is from Colourpop. This is one of their multi-chrome eyeshadow sticks. I have talked about this formula many times on my channel. I think these are quite a lot of fun to use. Originally, they were part of the Winx collection, and then they became permanent. This is the shade Disco Disco. It's a very pale pink, and it's got a strong blue-green shift. Now, these are not very sparkly, but they have this beautiful glow to them. You can see that when I layered it over a brown shadow, it just brought that shadow to life. Honestly, I don't understand why there's such few shade options in this category. I feel like this is one of Colourpop's most underrated formulas. Alright, and the next shade I have is from a Chinese beauty brand called Spenny. A few years ago, they came out with some baked shadows, and I'd been waiting for an expansion of this range, and I was starting to think that maybe they weren't going to be making any more products. And about 1 or 2 months ago, they came out with 4 new shades. This one is probably my favorite. It is a sheer pink that has blue shift and sparkle throughout. I've had some questions about how this formula compares specifically to some shadows from Pat McGrath that are baked like these. I would say these are more topper-like and less metallic than the Pat McGrath. Alright, now I've got another Chinese beauty brand called Sheeneffect. And by the way, I forgot to mention, the place where I get most of my C Beauty products is from C Beauty Mall, Look Healthy Store, and YESSTYLE. I have a dedicated video on Sheeneffect shadows that I will link in the cards. This is my very favorite one called Twilight City. I can't help it. I just really enjoy pink shadows that have this type of electric shift. And I think Twilight City truly does take the cake. Like, this is the most intense green shifting pink chrome that I've tried. I also really enjoy using this formula on my cheeks, even though it is a bit more on the sparkly side. Alright, the next shade we have is also from Sheeneffect. This is Endless Summer. Sheeneffect has about 10 of these shadows that are kind of split pan. You get multiple shades in one pan, and I don't know, this one seemed more pink leaning to me, which is why I included it. It's also one of my favorite shades. You get coral and pink and a little bit of green, and the shade is packed with really pretty multicolored sparkles. I think these shades are so aesthetically pleasing and a lot of fun to apply and wear, and you never know quite what you're gonna get until you swatch it. And I believe there's around 10 or 12 shades to pick from these multicolored Sheeneffect shadows. Alright, and I have a third and final shade from Sheeneffect. This is called Wishing Well. I want to say this came out either last year or the year before. It's this very light and ethereal, almost pearly toned pink, and it has the softest kind of pale green golden shift. There are a bunch of shades I've included that do have a kind of gold green shift, but none that shift this softly and subtly. I would say this one still stays looking quite pearly and cool toned. It's a really interesting soft shade, and I have to say pretty unique amongst the different pink chromes that I've tried. Alright, now I have a few shadows from Clionadh, and this is great because I've had some requests for showing some pink shadows from Clionadh. The first we have is Sunbeam, and this is definitely an oldie but a goodie. It's a glitter type chrome, and I want to say that this one may have been reformulated several years ago. The glitter type chromes have so many of my favorite shades, and you can see that Sunbeam has this pale pink base and a gold green shift. The shift is quite strong, and you can see that compared to the Sheeneffect shade I just showed, it has a warmer tone. The next shade we have from Clionadh is called Adornment. This is another oldie but a goodie. This is another glitter type chrome, so texture wise it does feel quite similar to the shade Sunbeam, and even tonally there are quite a few similarities, although I will say this shade definitely has a much stronger kind of green leaning shift, so that is one way I like to differentiate between the two shades. I also feel like these two shades work really well as inner corner highlights, brow bone highlights, especially because that pink base is pretty sheer. Alright, this next shade from Clionadh is another glitter type, and this is one that honestly I don't hear people talking about that often. My shadow is super old, but honestly it still performs pretty well. It has more of a hot pink base that is also pretty sheer, and it has a strong ultraviolet shift. I think I've just come to realize about myself over time that I am pretty obsessed with shadows and shades that have an ultraviolet shift. I feel like it's just always a shade that pops on brown skin. Alright, and the last couple of shades that I have from Clionadh are Pearlescence. There's only 4 shadows in this category, but I really have come to enjoy these over the years. Renaissance has what I would describe as a light pink base with a hint of purple, and it has a golden green shift. This is a formula I find myself recommending to people when they tell me that they're looking for approachable textures. People that want to dip their toes into trying Clionadh, but are looking for the most approachable textures that they can find. These shades have that, and they still have beautiful chrome shifts to them. Palace is also a pearlescent shade. It's got a pale pink base and a gold, orange, and green shift. In comparison to Renaissance, it has a little less purple in its base, and it's also got more orange in its shift compared to Renaissance. I would definitely say there's enough similarities between Palace and Renaissance that you wouldn't need to have both shades. So hopefully knowing the undertones of the shades and the shifts helps you decide a little bit more. I personally wish there were more shades in the pearlescent line because I find the texture to be so approachable. Alright, and I wanted to include one shade from Rituel de Fille. This is their eye gloss formula. Now, I definitely know that this formula is polarizing because I feel like people either really love it or not so much. They will definitely crease on the lid, but personally I think it's kind of in an editorial way, although I think that must depend on your eye shape. Violet is this really pretty pink with just a hint of red, and it has what I would describe as kind of a purpley blue leaning shift. I truly find this formula to be one of the most unique in my collection. If you've tried it, definitely let me know in the comments what you think of it. Alright, and I've got a few shades from Terra Moons, starting off with Ring Nebula. This came out earlier this year, and I believe it's part of a limited edition collection, but as far as I can tell, it's still available. Ring Nebula has a pinky coral base and it's got a strong gold green shift. And this is definitely one of my favorite formulas from Terra Moons. The texture of the shadow is pretty smooth while still being very sparkly and still has quite a strong chrome shift. I also feel like this formula is the one that has the widest appeal to Terra Moons customers. Also from Terra Moons, we have the shade Astrophel. This came out earlier this year as well. I've definitely talked about this shade a few times before because I think it's such a showstopper. It's got this gorgeous pinky orange corally base with a gold, blue, and green shift. Texture-wise, I would say that this has some similarities to Ring Nebula, but the sparkle particles are ever so slightly larger, so I feel like it has a little bit more of that show-stopping quality. But I do still find the texture of this shade to be quite approachable. Okay, Redshift is a shade that I've recently revisited, and I gotta say, I have definitely been sleeping on this one, and I also haven't really heard people talking about this shade. It has what I would describe as a hot pink base, but even though it's hot pink in its base, it still has some softness to it, like a little bit of a pastel quality. And it shifts to yellow, orange, and has a hint of green as well. There's something that's just really ethereal and glowy about this shade. Just like the other shades that I've shown so far, it has a pretty smooth base and is very sparkly. Next shade I'm showing from Terra Moons is called Halley's Comet. This has been around for several years at this point. And I have to say, it's one of my favorite shades from Terra Moons that you can get for under $10. It has a cool toned pink base and a silvery green and blue shift. And the sparkle particles in this shade are definitely on the larger side. Like, there is more texture in this shadow than the other shades that I've shown. So it definitely is something to keep in mind if you prefer staying away from shades that are more textured, although I will say it's not flaky. And the final shade I have from Terra Moons is called Star Formation. Right off the bat, I'm going to tell you this is the most textured shadow that I'm showing from Terra Moons because it has larger sparkle particles and it's also on the flakier side. I think this is a gorgeous shade. I want to say it came out a couple of years ago. It has this pale kind of pinky orange base. And it has a gorgeous yellow, green, and orange shift. This is another shade that is definitely a showstopper. Like, you can tell that with these two shades, the shades that do have more texture are also the ones that can give you a little bit more drama. All right, and I've got a couple of shades from Shine by SD. These are both oldies but goodies. The first is Unexplainable. You can see I have a giant pan in my shadow. This is actually one of the very first shades that I tried from Shine by SD. It's got a gorgeous sheer hot pink base and a strong gold green shift. And this is one of the first shades that I realized how different this shade will look on different skin tones. With that pale pink base being so sheer, this looks like a gold green shadow on my lids, and that's gorgeous. But if I wanted to bring out some of that pink, I would layer it over a pink base. The other shade I picked out from Shine by SD is Hottie. This shade I would describe as being a hot pink, and it's got an orange yellow leaning shift. Now, this shade is not super sparkly, but it just has a really pretty glow to it. Since this shadow released many, many years ago, there have been so many beautiful sparkly formulas to come out from Shine by SD. But I gotta say, I still really enjoy some of these OG shades and formulas. Right, this is definitely a category of shadows I could talk about at length, but I really wanted to keep this video a bit more focused and to share a bunch of different formulas and options I think a lot of people will enjoy. In making this video, I realized that I would love to see more pink chromes that have blue-purple leaning shifts. Let me know what you think though. I feel like gold-green shifts are definitely the most common in pink chromes. If you made it to the end of this video, I would love if you left me some type of pink emoji. I'd also love to hear in the comments which are your favorites of these shades, or if you have any other pink shades that you really enjoy. As always, I hope you found this video helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.